Episode 30, the big 3-0. Here we go. About a week and a half late, I would say, if I'm trying to keep track of my Monday releases. But you're going to have to bear with me. I was a little bit busy. Just got back from a hunting trip, or I should say I'm on the way back from a hunting trip. Currently stuck in a city about halfway between where I was and where I'm going. But we're going to get there. So today, for episode 30, joined by two guests. One of them, if you listen to this podcast, you're going to know and recognize as the one and only John Dudley, who, when people reach out to me about archery questions, the response you're going to get 99.9% of the time is you need to go check out at Knock On TV or knockonarchery.com, because that is my reference and resource for information. Unless you're asking me something specific about my bow or the setup that I have, I'll answer that and then point you in that direction. So the one-stop shop for archery information and knowledge would be Mr. Dudley. So Mr. Dudley invited me on the hunting trip. We were in Oklahoma hunting for hogs. My first time hunting hogs with my bow, or in general, I should say. And it was an awesome experience. One of the coolest things about it, and this will probably be a repeating theme, I would imagine, the more that I'm able to go hunt and experience hunting with groups of people that I don't know, is the ability to meet people from backgrounds and occupations that I probably would never cross paths with in real life. So the second guest today is Torsten Luth. And we're just going to start off by saying, and I think he covers it in the podcast, that his name basically means Thor's hammer. And I immediately felt inadequate as soon as he brought that up, because Andy is just short for Andrew, and that's all it means. I can't really compete with a guy whose name is Thor's hammer. But having said that, I never would have met Torsten if it wasn't for this hunting camp. He spends, from what I can tell, the majority of his time on the East Coast. He has lived in New York, the city, and upstate New York for quite some time now, but came over from Europe, specifically Germany. And what would be the best way to describe this? I'll just say he's a heavy hitter in the music industry, specifically Atlantic Records. So if you wanted to ever meet or know or talk to somebody who knows how the industry works, or you have questions about it, this would be the guy. And like I said, the repeating and common thing is that we came together over our desire or passion or love of hunting. And I just think that that's awesome. You can get people from such diverse backgrounds. They come together. You'll realize pretty quick that hunting is not as easy as you might think, so you share a little bit of suffering and then some laughter, and in my opinion, that is the recipe right there for camaraderie. So I was incredibly lucky and fortunate to get to meet the guy, and now I'm going to harass him for the rest of my life and stay in touch with him. So here we go. Episode 30 from the ranch in Oklahoma, post-hog hunt. Here we go.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
I think we should start by you two describing how you met, because I'm curious to hear how that went down.
How we met?
He called me one day.
How did he get your number?
I texted it to him. So I was watching Instagram, maybe something, social media nonsense, and he had bought Harry a record player.
Yep.
And you guys were buying a Led Zeppelin album.
Well, that's what I bought him for his first ever album, and it was the only one he had. So he had never, I wanted to buy him a record player, and I literally posted a picture of this record player and the Led Zeppelin 2 album. I think that was the only one we could find. But I told him, you got to learn to get the lead out, son. And
I don't even know what that means, but
I saw that and I just thought, okay, well, here's a man who taught me archery. Let me tell him about music.
See, but you guys are too far ahead. How did he find it? How'd you find him on the archery scene? Like, you were already following him on Instagram. You were
Oh, how I
Archer
found
first?
him on the archery scene.
Yes. I mean, like, how did you meet? How did these two powers come together?
Well, when I bought the farm upstate, not a farm, it's not a farm, like a little ranch, I had lots of spare space and I thought I should have a bow, which is like the natural thought to have, you know. And so I went and bought this bow, but I didn't know how to shoot it. So, again, you know, there's a YouTube video for everything. And I went on YouTube and looked for archery instructions, and I didn't really find anything that I liked. There was lots of nonsense, nothing that had any interest to me. And then I gave it up again because I was like, this just sucks. And
So you're saying archery is not easy when you don't know what you're doing.
when you don't know what you're doing, it becomes quite complicated. And if there's no one to teach you, so, which there isn't that many people in upstate New York. And then I don't know whether I found him in another desperate attempt, I think, to find somebody who knew what they were talking about and not just shooting arrow nonsensically through the air. I either found you first, I think I found you first, and then I saw something, and then he was on Rogan's podcast, and I saw that. So I don't know whether I knew his name, and therefore went to Rogan. This came all together, or whether coincidentally he was on Rogan, and I saw that, and I was like, there's a man that intelligently speaks, and I understand what he's saying. And that was it.
The Rogan connection, again.
Yeah, but I don't know whether it was. I think it was the other way around. I think it was him. I found him first, and then I found Rogan, because I didn't listen to podcasts really.
Yeah, you are right about that, because that was the one time that I can actually say that, because you told me that. I forgot what you saw. I think it was like the Knocked and Ready to Rock segments, because you bought a bow press too. You had never even done archery, and you had like bow press, everything. And then
were you there last night when he was talking about his ammunition reloading adventure? He has all that too, and he's never used it.
He has all kinds of stuff that he's never used. Believe
Yeah,
me.
I bought this whole reloading press setup, like automatic too. Like it's not like I don't have to sit there and measure it all. Oh no, it gets all automatically measured, falls into place, things turn. I never took it out of the box. It literally arrived, and I haven't had time to unpack it yet. And it's 3 years that it's there.
Yeah, I think you saw on my social media that I was going on Rogan's podcast. Didn't you and Trina listen?
Yeah, Trina and I would definitely. She was definitely there for that, because, and then we bought her bow, which she doesn't really shoot, but she's got one, looks cute. And then we listened to that whole thing where the first time the science of archery, which I all forgot yesterday again, but it was at least explained.
We're going there later.
It was at least explained to me in a way that I could do something with it.
So you reached out over Instagram, now over music. How long ago was this? Because I'm trying to figure out
I don't know, 1.5
Torsten's
years.
journey here.
1.5 years? Like you came to my house last year around this time.
Yeah, it sounds about right. And, well, I still didn't know him at that point until he sent, you know, we're fortunate. I think you've had some pretty cool gifts sent to you from listeners. We have some really cool stuff sent at times from people that are just appreciative for kind of free education.
Like the leopard on meth?
Yeah, yep. And Torsten called Sharon or emailed her and said, I would like to send something. What's the address? So, you know, she just gave him the P.O. box. So we go to the post office and they come out with this real heavy box. And I open it up and typical Torsten, it was something very short, just like, I think your son would like these. And it was literally the entire Led Zeppelin collection, like unwrapped, unstickered, and I'm like, what in the? And then obviously there's his business card on there. So I mean, when when someone can just put their initial on their Atlantic Records business card, it's like, okay, I better call this guy and thank him. So I called him and thanked him, and then I just said, you know, is there any way I could watch you shoot and give you some pointers? So he sent me a text of him shooting in the backyard, which I still have.
It's an amazing picture.
Yeah, it's a great picture. And
we could use that actually as the picture for this podcast on social media. We'll have to get the approval from Torsten on that one, but I think that would be strong to open with that.
Yeah, and it didn't take long, and I don't know. We've talked about this before. I'm fairly selective on people I surround myself with, and everybody is almost like this totally unique character in this world, which I know everybody's different, but Torsten is about as clear and transparent as I've ever met, and he's just been someone where I'm like, hey, I have this idea and I want to bounce it off you. Because if I ever want a completely non-biased, no BS, you know, what someone in this world could possibly conjure up by this concept, he's the one to ask, and then he'll tell you in a way that makes you laugh, but also makes you think about whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, and then
make you lay in bed at night and cry thinking about your life choices. So this is your we're in
Torsten's under the weather, by the way.
Slightly, yeah.
And this is an early morning podcast over a cup of coffee.
I told him.
Yeah, he's taking off, but we're in Caddo, right? Caddo, Oklahoma?
Or Caddo.
Caddo. You're the local.
Depends on the enunciation of the local.
So we're at Oklahoma for my favorite, bow hunting. Torsten, this is your second time bow hunting, right?
Yeah, first time was we had a very famous turkey shoot in Iowa last year, where we were shooting for the belt, and this is the second time.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? Because I have not been turkey hunting, but I'm assuming it's different than hog hunting.
Well, yeah, turkey hunting, you sit in a blind, wait for the turkeys to come, then you shoot the turkey, pick it up and leave. In theory, that's kind of it. And in the meantime, you scratch on wooden things and it makes the turkey think you're talking to them. This is different because basically be running through fields, up mountains, downhill, uphill, God knows where for 4 days, schlepping bows around and equipment, trying to find pigs that don't want to be found in grass that is so high that you don't see them. Does that kind of cover it?
That covers it.
And it's called spot and stalk, but you don't really spot them. And that makes it difficult to stalk them.
How was the spot and stalk yesterday? Because we're finishing. I mean, you're heading home.
I'm heading home in 2 hours or so.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you got a shot in last night. You got two shots in last night.
We got 2 shots in last night. Yeah, that was good. So we've been trying to spot them all day, and literally in the last hour before the sun went down, we saw this huge, I don't know what you call them, pack.
Yeah, I would assume.
Pack of pigs running towards us. Ideal scenario. So
yeah, because when they're running away, how fun is that to try to keep up?
When they're running away, it's real difficult. But when they're running towards you, you just got to get the hell out of Dodge and hide and wait for them to come by. So we did it all by the book. I looked where I was going to shoot them. I ranged it. It was 31 yards. So just because I wasn't nervous, I set my sight on 41 yards, which at the time I didn't really realize. And then they came by and I shot at them and didn't hit it.
How was your shot process?
I was going to say, walk me through the smooth
how was your,
shot process.
How was your Dudley archery school of training
it's
at
good.
That moment?
It all went really well because obviously the more often you do it, especially on a range, the easier it gets. And I consider myself an okay shooter, but you see these pigs come, and everything you've ever learned, you immediately forget and fall back into what I would call a very rudimentary shot process. So, possible that I just ripped that thing back to my ear, let it fly, and therefore didn't hit it, but I wouldn't admit that.
Yeah. Did you have fun, though?
Yeah, no, it was great. best time ever. Sorry, I'm coughing.
No worries.
Best time ever. We were hanging out for 4 days, running outside.
I try to explain that to people, like the hunting and the actual getting to that moment where you grip it and rip it. I'm gonna call the Torsten technique, which don't worry, I can grip it and rip it with the best of them. I completely airballed my first shot of what was it, Tuesday morning, or whatever the second day here. But yeah, it's that moment is I think what everybody focuses on, but I think it's almost. I mean, we were laying in bed last night talking. I was dying, laughing, crying, and like all the conversations around the meals and getting to meet like new people that I would have met, and then go out into the woods and fall down and have people laugh at you and point at you and do stupid things like that. To me, is more fun, I think, than the small amount of time you're actually looking through your peep sight. You have to have all of that. If it was just like you came out and like, okay, cool, the hogs are here, let's go. It'll take 5 minutes. I don't think it would be near the experience.
It's a classic. I don't know. It's just a staple of life. If you work hard for something and have sacrifice and hardship and humor to build up to the moment is more valuable. You remember it more. If you just came out and, like that first night now that you've hunted all week, you realize how lucky that was, because
I was literally pissed that didn't happen every time we went out. I mean,
I was a bit jealous, I have to say. So we're arriving here.
We might as well tell people what happened.
We haven't really unpacked, and Dudley, because that's how he is, was like, oh, we go hunting. We're like, we're going hunting now.
We got a call. He's like, 10 minutes. Be ready to roll, boys.
So we just jump in the...
With 15 minutes of daylight, I'm like, I'm pulling up.
Have
ready. Your crap on and be standing on the deck. We're going for a quick run now.
So, yeah, we jumped into the pickup truck. I'm not saying by what company because I have to bring it back later. I don't want to know. So we jump into the pickup truck, drive down this mountain in this pickup truck. I'm like dying that this pickup truck's getting ruined. Drive on this road, and we stop, and Dudley goes, there's pigs. Easiest thing in the world.
It was legitimately 15 seconds after we passed that gate.
Yeah, there's pigs. The two jump out of the car. We don't see them for 15 minutes. Suddenly you see like a green dot flying through the air. You hear a squeal. Silence again. Then 15 minutes later they come back and say, done. Black pig down, I think, was the...
Black hog down was the hashtag for the week.
So, and I thought, okay, that's going to be cool. If that's how it goes, we just drive around, bit like
for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. Yeah.
Shoot a pig. I mean, I was going to bring a cooler for all the pig parts I was going to take home. I'm glad I didn't, because it's really like horrific to take an empty cooler around, but to bring an empty cooler back, that would be too humiliating. But it's not like it's not like that every time.
Yeah, you went more than a day without actually seeing some. Yeah.
Yeah, fast forward to day 2 when you got to do that same stalk with me. Pretty much the same thing that I did with Andy. On day 2, I finally got to go with you.
Oh.
How did that go?
That was another amazing John Dudley moment, because we've been stalking all morning. No, we've been trying to spot and stalk all morning, but we were running around all morning. So I come back totally exhausted. I'm like sitting there lighting a pipe, ready to have a drink, relaxed. And I hear, Torsten, like shouting. I'm like, fuck. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm like,
it's the internet. You can say whatever you want to.
So I was like, oh God, what happened now? So I run down. They're already standing by the car. Grab your bow, and off we go. So I just grabbed my bow. I didn't have a hat. I didn't have really anything. No water, nothing. I would jump into some vehicle, drive down the mountain.
Are you calling that drive down to the fence a mountain?
The hill, whatever you want to call it.
I think the elevation gate is maybe 75 feet.
Down that? That's whatever it is. We change difference in height, elevation difference, blah. And now we're on the road, and there's the pigs. And the pigs are moving.
Is this when I was filming them with the drone?
That's when you were like,
So we got what we were doing right before this was stuffing our face with fresh. What was that? It wasn't a hot dog, but he had all the sausage out.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. He did some kind of a spicy sausage with like smoked beans and grilled vegetables.
I'm gonna sit down with Chad today too and talk about that.
Yeah, I was starving, and
I was literally one
bite in, and I would be more worried about if we would have taken your vehicles that day, because there was so many like baked beans and hot mustard across whoever's steering wheel that was.
We literally got back from the morning, took a bite of food. I was in my first bite, and Dudley goes running the other direction, just going, hogs, hogs. So I stayed and threw the drone up in the air to get just an idea of the size of the group, and I couldn't believe how fast they were moving. If I didn't have that overhead to show the group, and it was not only how fast they were moving, it was how precise their directional travel was. Like they assume they found the corn, and then pew, they're gone. Yep. And we're talking little pigs too. There was some little.
They always follow that big female. That big female in front just leads the pack all the time.
So she was leading the pack away from Torsten, which gets us back to the experience.
yes, who hadn't had any drinks or food at that time. So we're now following John Dudley on the road, who's following the pigs. Following John Dudley is not easy. So the big man, he's just basically moving forward. And I'm not saying we were running behind, he was walking and we were running, but that was kind of the speed thing. And it just didn't stop. And I was totally exhausted. I hadn't drunk anything, I wasn't wearing a hat. It was like everything was wrong, and we are running behind these pigs for hours. And then at some point, we caught up with them. I caught up with my breath. We caught up with the pigs. And then you and
I got Tyler shot first.
Tyler had a shot at them. And after that,
we would pursue again.
We pursued them again and started to real stalk. This was now stalking. We were kind of close-ish to the pigs, and we were stalking them. And then there were some cows. Mm-hmm. So, it was between us, the cows, and the pigs. Those were the three units and there was a drone in the air. Those were the first things that were moving.
Yep.
And then we got pretty close to one of the pigs. And then...
No, we were close to one of them. I was close to one of the pigs.
Yeah, and then you called me, which is when I started to move.
I think I said cover that shiny head and
first,
get up
first, first I had to cover my shiny head, yes, because obviously I wasn't wearing a hat.
Your sweat glare looked like a mirror out there. You could have flagged SOS by moving your head up and down.
It was midday too, so a sun directly over the top.
Yeah, no hat, and we had just run to these things. So anyway, he's he's very direct when he says what he wants when you're stalking. So it's like, cover your head. Yep, covered my head, and then move here. And I started to move, and that's when the pig looked up, and I was moving.
And that's it, huh?
And that was that for that moment. And then they moved, I don't know, 40, 50 yards. And then we were stalking again, and then basically the cows came in and just shushed them away.
Blew them on, yeah. It was interesting. I had never been around wild hogs. This was my first time hunting them as well. I was surprised what you could get away with and what you could not get away with. Because from a distance, I don't know, I'm assuming you and Matt had the same experience, but from a distance, we would see them and just move to the side of the road or just make sure we weren't having a profile. We were moving very fast, I would consider.
Yep.
And then as long as their heads were down and they were busy... the other day when Dudley and I, we were crawling on our knees, and it's easy. I just get directly behind him, and I agree. The closer you are to an animal, the more precise his guidance becomes, which is good. That's in his moment. That's his zone. But you could. They actually tolerated quite a bit, because we were walking on some dry leaves and making some noise. But then also, if you sat there and listened, they're making a ton of noise too, with their head down, throwing stuff up in the air. It was really cool. So far, I think I'm yet to repeat I think this is my 4th time hunting with Dudley. It's been for a different animal every time. So I'm slowly like filling in the blanks as to where my hunting, I'm not going to call it hunting career, my hunting very serious hobby is going. But
it's interesting because you learn every time. I mean, you learn every time anyway. But as I said, on day 1, I moved when I shouldn't have moved, and the pig saw it. So that wouldn't have happened on day 2. And I think when I went yesterday, we shot at them, and I kind of totally was like in this moment where all my shot routine went out of the window, and I missed something on a distance that I would never miss. I mean, this pig was dead.
Yep.
Anybody who would have had their thoughts together would have hit that pig, no question.
So let me ask you this:
I think I would do it again today. If I would do it again today, it would be different because I would have known that and would have remembered not to lose my mind. Good point.
Have you ever, in your shot training or practice, do you ever try to elevate your heart rate or replicate that feeling?
No, that's something I'll have to do. I think run like I live on a little. I call it mountain. Some people call it low height elevation.
So we're talking like a 25-foot.
No, it's a bit. It's kind of steep. I would do that. I should do that. Probably run down, come up, and shoot down instead of just standing there with a drink. Easy.
Well, those are fun days too. But what I will say, believe me, I've been in that moment many times. The more you're in that moment, the better off you get at that moment. And I mean, I'm sure Dudley reinforces it too. But the low heart rate, from my old career, right? Like people go out to the range, like, oh, I can shoot at 1,000 yards. I'm like, yeah, you're laying down on a mat, perfectly nice day. Nobody's shooting back at you for one. Which changes things and accuracy wildly. Yeah. Your shot routine is compressed down to a microsecond. But the more you get to that place where the heartbeat is taking control and it's moving all over and you can't think, and God help you if they ask you to do a math problem, the next time you're there, you're doing better and better and better. So I'll do probably 1 out of every 4 or 5 times I'll go practice. I'll do something because you can introduce that stress however you want. But if you get used to being there in that moment, I bet you'll crush it the next time you're in that position.
Yeah. So it was good. Good fun. I'm glad I'm leaving though today. Like the cooking's killing me. As in, I haven't had more carbohydrates than in the last 3 days. Like in the last year. Like it's delicious.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit down with Chad, the guy cooking for us later today.
It's really good. He's an amazing cook. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, we eat rich here.
Are we?
Yeah. Like casseroles with cheese.
Oh, yeah.
And yesterday we had shepherd's pie with cheese, and then there's potatoes in there. I haven't had potatoes in.
Yeah, but cheese is fat. You keep saying cheese. The carbs would be
the potatoes that are underneath the cheese.
Yeah,
that is molten on top of it. And in the casserole, I don't know what that was, but was it grated potatoes?
We
had shredded potatoes, right?
We had some mashed potatoes in the shepherd's pie, which was carb, and then we had shredded potatoes
for breakfast.
For breakfast
casserole. But mainly
with the sausage in bread rolls.
I didn't have bread rolls. Were there bread rolls?
Well, we had the
those the hoagies.
The one you got one bite of and then went running around. So Torsten, how many people in your line of work bow hunt? I almost feel like you might be an anomaly.
Yes, there's not that many people in my line of work, and then out of those, I think it's a single-digit figure. So
we have to go. We have to go backwards too, because we got to explain to people how you got here from Alabama. Because I get just a tinge of accent, so we got to. So you're German, from Germany. So take me back to how you decided to, or how you ended up in the U.S. Because there was London in between, right?
Yeah, I used to work in London all the way through the '90s, Tony Blair years. And
what were you doing? What type of work?
Same. I was running international marketing departments for Sony Music, and.
But hold on, how did you get for Sony? Because I like the story of how you started working for them. So we're gonna go back further.
Okay, so
Why don't we start? Torsten comes out as a baby.
Yes.
What's
Torsten's
your first
born.
word to your mom?
So I used to be an officer in the German army, and ran tank platoons for them, and then I stopped that and studied law and finance, and worked for the Ministry of Finance for the German government. and did. It was an agency called Federal Asset Office, and we dealt with everything that the German government owns that's not money. So real estate, we bought land, we built pipelines. Coincidentally, we were also the people that were responsible for paying out for war crimes, which was quite weird. And so I did that, worked for them, and that's only something you do during the day. So in the evening, I used to go to shows all my life, and I love comic books. So I helped a guy who had a comic book store in Germany, who was a friend of mine. I helped import comic books from America for him, just because I could speak the language a little. And the comic book store was next to Sony Music. So someone bought comic books there, and I met these guys. And they were obviously record in the music industry, so they used to go to shows too. So they recognized me because I've been like around all their lives. And we started to talk, and they were like, "Hey, you shouldn't work for the German government. You should work for us." And I said, "So what would I do?" And they're like, "Oh, you can become marketing assistant." I'm like, "I don't know. I studied law and finance. I've got this glorious career going. Like I was made. They couldn't have fired me anymore. Like it was all done. They flew me to Berlin, discussed my future. I was like, yo, this is all cool, but I have to leave." And so I became a marketing assistant at Sony Music in Germany when I was 28, which is really late.
Is it?
Yeah, because most people who join the music industry, you leave college, I guess, in America.
And just start right
and
there.
then you start right then. I started 10 years later than everybody else.
Yeah, but you know what? You were gathering music knowledge and experience during that time period.
Yes, no, it was all good. So I did that for about 6 months, and then my assistant days were over. And then I met people in London who worked for MTV. And then MTV moved me to London. I stayed there for a while. And then I went back to Sony and ran marketing departments for them, which I'd never done. Neither had I run a marketing department, nor did I know anything about international.
Especially a finance guy. Those are normally two polar opposites.
Yeah, but I
one
wasn't
seems
really
creative. The other one seems like they'd be very analytical.
I wasn't really a good finance guy. I was just bored and didn't know what to do. And the whole thing about it was quite a diverse thing, the Federal Asset Office. It was not a bad time. We did some cool shit. So I wasn't really a finance guy. It was just part of what I did, because you have some knowledge. But so I went to London, stayed 12, 14 years in London, I think. As I said, all through the 90s, which was a good time. 90s in London, good time, Britpop. I don't know whether anybody in America knows about these things, but I looked all my life after Oasis and Fatboy Slim and bands like that. At some point I became real close friends with Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead. We had a good time. And then in 2005, I left Sony and joined Warner Music. And in 2007, they were like, yo, you're coming to America. I was like, no, I'm not. And they were like, yes, you are.
Here's your plane ticket.
Here's your plane ticket. And they moved me to America. And ever since then, I've been here.
Was it a little bit of a shock moving to the U.S. from Europe?
Yeah, I never wanted to move to America. I had just settled. I had bought a little house in England. It was all kind of starting to become nice. And I came here. Good fun, though. Good fun.
Yeah, I bet you've seen a lot of changes in the music industry.
Yeah, when, I started in the beginning of the 90s, and the beginning of the 90s, CDs were just like a gold mine. It was a gold revolution. It was a gold mine. People were making so much money off CDs. And then if you look at 97, 98, I don't know which year Napster came in, but that changed everything. And
I think it was just after
98, 99.
Yeah.
99 maybe. So Napster comes in and changes everything, and suddenly everybody's losing their jobs. Because the music industry started to downsize because they lost so much money. None of the people, maybe one of the people that started with me at Sony in Germany has still got a job in the music industry.
I remember as a consumer, I remember rocking, you'd go to Blockbuster Video on Friday to get your VHS tape, and then on the weekend, you'd go literally flipping through the CD collection. So they were making so much money. Is that because of the margins that were in the CDs?
People were buying so many too.
Yeah.
It's not just about margins. If you think about it, an album like Titanic, the soundtrack to Titanic, sold I think 35 million copies, and then the Celine Dion song, "Heart Will Go On," whatever it's called, that was on the album.
John and the Brad of all Brads know that song well, yeah.
It doesn't matter, but she sang the title song to Titanic, so
Yep.
the soundtrack sells 35 million, and her album with the track on sells another 30 million. That's 65 million records just based on one song. These people, like the amount of CDs that were being sold was just incredible, and all that stopped because people just, they still consumed music, but they consumed it in a way that people weren't getting paid.
So you're talking about now the download, the way people consume music now?
A lot of people, illegal downloading, obviously was the first big thing, and then at some point things got not really better, but stopped being as bad when iTunes came into the download business. Mm-hmm. So it changed to digital, and now with streaming things are great again because I think streaming kind of democratized. Mm-hmm. Is that a good word?
Yep.
The music consumption. And it's the first time in the last 2 or 3 years that I think things are going up again. We're hiring people. Before that, like I would say from the end of the 90s all the way, people were losing their jobs and people were downsizing.
And for the artists as well, I mean, they're not getting the return on their investment for their time.
Most definitely.
Like they were before.
Yeah.
What for an artist in general, I mean, I don't know how much about it you can discuss or what's not private or public knowledge, but like for an artist, where do they make the lion's share of their money? Is it from touring? Is it from making the album?
I would say that at the moment touring is huge. Touring and selling records. I mean, I still call it selling records, but
is anybody still printing CDs? Is there a small market for that still?
Yeah, CDs are still being made. There's just a small market. I mean, it's getting smaller and smaller all the time. Vinyl has got a resurgence. No, I'm not saying that that's what's changing all our lives, but people start buying vinyl again, and that was really dead. I mean, people weren't making vinyl all the way through the 90s. They printed a couple of 100 copies. 90s vinyl is rare. So that's coming back. That's good.
Why do you think that's coming back?
Because it sounds good. I think, and it looks good, and people still like a little bit of memorabilia. And I think a lot of people that buy the vinyl and look at it, and then they listen to the music on Spotify or Apple.
Yeah, it's not quite the same.
No, but I think that's how they listen to it, and then they just have their vinyl. They've got a little record player somewhere. But
it's fun to actually do something. I mean, that's what's cool when. We're just so used to just hit play on our phone.
Well, immediately accessible too, and you just stuff it in your pocket.
Yeah, when I'm downstairs and I'm working on like my own bows, or if I'm building a bow for someone, like when I built yours.
I was just gonna say that the first day that we really hung out together, one of the first things he did was throw on Metallica on the vinyl, and it did not suck.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
It's just good fun.
Yeah, it's coming back for a reason. It gives you something to do.
I'm waiting for them to. I'll know that CDs are dead when cars stop coming with seats. My truck still has a CD slot. I'm waiting for that to go away because the only thing I would put in there would probably be the little ticket that comes out of the parking thing at the airport, and that's like sometimes I'll put it in there, and I have lost them in there before, and that sucks when you're trying to explain that to the lady or the gal when you're leaving. But for me, it's streaming too, or. I think the way it changed consumption for me is instead of buying an album, which I hated 9 out of 10 songs on there, I just go and get that one song, which probably hurts the artist because then people are hearing their other songs less, I would imagine.
Well, really, I don't know whether it hurts the artist. I think it hurts the art more than it hurts the artist because, in a streaming world, people get paid on consumption. So if you're playing an artist's song 10 times and it's just the same song, he gets paid as much as if you were playing 10 different songs.
It's based off of individual. Like, how do they track that? How do they track what I play?
They track streams. Like,
really?
They track. I mean, they flew to the moon. They track streams. It's really like there is people who track streams, and then it literally gets
just mathematical algorithm, if you will, Dudley. Cranking those things out, paying attention to them.
Yeah.
God, it's got to be complicated.
Well, you look at like Pandora, Spotify, all these things. I mean, whenever you're putting, you put in Chili Peppers mix or whatever, every single song that's playing throughout that category, it's all being tracked back to the artist. So
what if you skip it? Like you listen to it for a couple seconds and then you hit the skip. Do they still get paid for that?
Don't know. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. I think a stream counts after. God, there's a time attached to it. For us, we see data for I think 30 seconds or so.
Okay, so we went from Germany to the U.S., where you're crushing it now with your ammunition loader and your bows. You also tell me you were passionate about your box delivery service. You got my mind cranking. I think I need to create a
I like box delivery services.
I get it. They're cool.
Yeah.
And so, in the office building you work in New York, you're probably the only bow hunter up there.
Probably.
How would they respond if you invited them to come out here? Would they think it's all just about that moment of you taking a shot, or do you think the people you work with would enjoy the experience?
The people that I work with are super smart. They would enjoy the experience too. It's just something that you're not really exposed to. If you're in New York City, I mean, it's just different life.
Yeah.
But I mean, who wouldn't enjoy it? Sitting on a beautiful house in the middle of nowhere, nature around you, you know.
On a mountain.
On a mountain, you see more deer than you can possibly see in your life. You see every animal you want to see. You see red cardinals, there's blue jays. I mean, who wouldn't enjoy that?
So what's next for your hunting journey? What would you like to hunt next?
Don't know. I'm going fishing next. I think that's the next big thing.
That's right. Oh, damn you! I forgot you're into fishing as well. You brought fishing poles, didn't you?
I brought fly fishing gear. Yeah. Don't know. I haven't discussed it yet. I was always gonna. I would do this again. We'll find something.
I could see Torsten in the weeds with an elk.
Well,
Elk would be good, but I don't think I'm fit enough for elk hunting.
That's the motivation, though.
That would be the motivation, yes. I think elk would be good. I would like to hunt everything that I like eating.
Yeah.
I think that's to me the parameter. I wouldn't hunt anything that I wouldn't naturally want to eat, and I wouldn't just eat it because I hunted it. As in, I wouldn't hunt a bear. Let's just put it this way. I'm sure you can eat bear, but that wouldn't be something I'd be interested in.
Yeah.
It would be more an elk. We go boar hunting again.
What would you recommend for him, Dud?
I don't know. I think the two things that he picked at first are really good segues for people who, you know, Torsten's really passionate about, which I think is important. If he makes a shot, he wants to make sure the shot counts. And so, I mean, he was more relieved that he missed because he knew that
didn't
wound anything. So, you know, I don't know. I think turkey hunting is a good segue because you are in a blind and the turkeys are coming to your call, and then they're kind of putting on their show for the hens that are there. So they're kind of there in front of you, and they're, we call it strutting.
How far out are they when they're doing that?
Wherever you put your decoys, if at all. I mean, it's not like they always come to them. You have to call them and talk to them, right? And they come in and they're literally fanning out and trying to impress the hen decoys that you have in front of you. What's nice about that, and I started there with Sharon, my wife, and then with Torsten, I was able to, because you're in a blind, you're concealed literally inside a blind, you have little shooting windows. I'm able to talk to them about things which I think for any bow hunter, it's important to have a mentor that, might teach you how to practice or teach you, even reading a book or watching YouTube videos. You cannot watch enough YouTube videos to be able to come out here and have a spot and stalk where you couldn't say, I would have done something different. Because every single time there's just these small things that are adding up. And then if the shot presents itself, having the experience and knowledge to bring yourself back to day one of learning your shot process, which is, for Torsten with this turkey, he made a good shot in the blind. I was able to talk to him. Okay, we're going to wait for this angle. make sure you go straight up the leg. This
When
is
you're
where you want
shepherding through the experience,
Yeah.
it's a different experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
and he wasn't like in spaz mode because he was honestly, when you're occupying your conscious mind with, these things that you're thinking about in the process, and I'm telling him, okay, you're going to wait for it to turn this way, you're going to go straight up the leg, your sight's set on the right number, I really want you to make sure you anchor properly, turn your knees around so as you're shooting from a seated position, you're not going to get your legs in the way of your string. And I mean, I was literally coaching you through all that, and it was probably a completely different experience. And then now I think like step 2 is I really like hog hunting because you almost get the same type of maneuver experience that you would need for like spot and stalk mule deer or elk or spot and stalk bears, because they're moving, they can hear really well, but their nose is on a level that is off the charts. So if you aren't playing the wind right, or the other thing too is there's normally more than one set of eyeballs, so if you're moving while one of them has their head up and they're looking, they see movement really well, which is what happened with when we went out, I got a shot, I got Tyler in for a shot, he used the wrong pin, shot over the back of it, but because it was a bow, they didn't really know what the sound was. They just know some type of a sound went off, but it's not like, it's not like one of them got hit with an arrow. So we just had to stay after him. We stayed after him for another, half mile or so. And I get in close 30 yards and I'm sitting there and there's this boar just kind of rooting around, digging up, whatever they dig up in the ground. And I told Torsten, I said, come up here by me. And as he's moving, the hog picked its head up, because they do that, they'll root around, do their thing, and then every now and then they just pick up to kind of look and listen to see if there's anything around them.
They don't sit still or do anything for long.
Yeah, and then while his head was up, Torsten was
moving.
Yeah, he was moving, and I saw when the pig had his head up, I was frozen. I mean, I knew that even if I turned my head to the side at 30 yards, the exposure of my brim on my hat would probably be enough to catch his attention. So I just kind of stayed locked, but then I could see him kind of twitch up even higher, and I thought, okay, he's seen something. And then he grunts and runs off, and I turn around, and Torsten's got his head down, and he's still like maneuvering to me. So I had to have a friendly conversation with him about
Brisk?
friendly,
brisk.
Like I was saying, the closer you are to the animals, Dudley's guidance will get very precise.
Well, yeah, in short sentences, very precise.
I can't imagine trying to figure out all of this stuff by yourself. Like you said, the mentor being the huge role. Like I cannot. People reach out to me, like I've told, like man, where do I start? I'm like, you're asking the wrong person. You need to ask Dud. But because I'll get hit up from email like, hey, I've been bow hunting for 5 years. I'm figuring it out on my own. I'm yet to have any success. I'm yet to see any animals. And that's a long road to hoe without having somebody who has that knowledge and being able to put all those pieces together. That would be one of the hardest things I can imagine trying to find, especially if you're not having any success and you're just having failure after failure after failure. That'd be really tough.
Well, I'm really fortunate in, one, I got exposed to hunting from my Uncle Kenny, who is probably one of the best whitetail hunters I know still. And he hunts some of the smartest whitetails on the planet. The whitetails that live down in the deep south, like Mississippi, they've had people and dogs and groups and gun hunter. They've had people chase them for so many years that they are on an entirely different level of smart. And I started really young, and I remember, he would say, okay, he had all these reflective tacks that he would put on trees, and he would drop you off, and he'd be like, okay, follow these reflective tacks. And he was adamant about go in the dark, out in the dark all the time. So I would have my little green, and he'd say, take this green light. They don't run away from a green light. I don't shine a white light at all. So I'd follow these tacks all the way through, and he'd say, I've got a little path on the ground where I've raked the leaves. Make sure you're stepping on that raked path. And I always, I was young. I never really put two and two together until all of a sudden I start trying to whitetail hunt for myself up in Illinois. And I think I went like maybe 10 years of hunting in Illinois before getting it wasn't 10, but it was probably 5 in Illinois before I was able to get my own deer there. And it didn't seem like I was doing anything different. All I was doing was not having someone there to do all those little bitty things. Like, I'd go out and put my own stand up, and I wouldn't realize, okay, well, I put my stand up where the sun's shining on me, so every time I move, the sun's glowing. The sun's totally shining on me. Or, I don't know, I'd pick a spot where I'd be hunting in a transition area, and I may only hunt for, the early season, so I'm sitting in this transition area, although all the deer are out on a food source, and I just, you never put all these little bitty things together. And then Chad Ward, people. Chad Ward's trying to cook some amazing food for us, so he's in the background trying to be quiet with a roll of aluminum foil. Impossible.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to when I started shooting professionally, or I guess working in an archery shop shooting, there was people around me that were really good hunters. So I would get to hear things, I was literally almost hearing real life, like what you would read in an article about how-tos. It was good hunters that I was getting to listen to all the time because I was behind the counter at an archery shop. So you're just hearing these guys say, yeah, I tried that, and then this is what happened, so I did this. And it was how-tos constantly. And then once I went to work for a bow company, well, now, it's like Torsten, he's, from the music world, he's around the elite of the elite. Like, his company is sponsoring the best out there.
Yep.
And they're, so he's got conversations with the best in that field. And then there was a few people at the factory where I worked where, they were legitimate hunters, really, really good hunters. And I had a lot of opportunities to go to cool places because of where I worked. So I would be, I was almost what you guys are getting experience with me, I guess, when you come. I had that experience 20 years ago when I'd get to go on a hunt with some of the real tree guys or whatever, and you pick up these little tidbits, and then it just
be a sponge.
Yep, yeah, and the more you do different styles of hunting, the more you pick up different elements of being. You just start to polish yourself in all these little bitty areas where, that's why I think if he wants to someday shoot an elk, this is the perfect place to start, because unless you're going to say, I want to go on an elk hunt where I'm sitting in a ground blind on a water hole or at a wallow or something, or, I think Torsten could go do antelope and he would be totally comfortable if that was an animal that he wanted to eat, because you're sitting there and you're waiting for them to come to water. And that's not for every hunter. They don't necessarily like that style of hunting, but that is a style. Versus if he wants to hunt elk, he's going to need to know when you spot something, you got to put the gas pedal down, and you got to, I call it being fast, being still. I wrote some spot and stock articles called "Be Fast, Be Still." And that's what it is. You have to learn when to mash the gas and then shut the car off, and then mash the gas and shut the car off, and then you got to know when to just let the tires roll. There's like these different speeds, and if you don't do it exactly at the right time, then the reality is it is hunting. Yeah. People see us post success a lot, and I think I'm fortunate that my success probably is high percentage-wise with the different types of things that we do, which we didn't have success in France, so it's a balance.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on. You know, there's a lot of times where it doesn't work. I mean, you know, there's a lot of times where I look back at France and I think, you know, if I ever have another hunting situation like that, probably what I would have rather done was bundle up and go to that one hillside where we saw them rutting the entire time.
Yep.
And just literally stage up in those rocks. Like, I think we could have backed into those rocks and staged up there and just literally stayed there for a whole day or maybe a couple days, because the crust on the ground was just too noisy for 3 people to get close to something. That's just the reality of it. I mean, I was walking around the whole time thinking, if we're not going towards something and see it first and stop and then let it close the gap, this just isn't going to happen with you know, 1/4 inch of crusty ice on the ground, you know, and 3 guys stomping around.
I thought that yesterday sometimes when we were going through the woods. 3 people in the woods make an awful lot of noise, and 3 people can try to be as quiet as they want. They'll never be, at least, I mean, I'm sure there's professional quiet people that have learned this, but like regular people, you can try to be as quiet as you want. You will always be loud somehow, at least loud enough for something to hear you.
Well, that's what, you know, what was it, 2 days ago when they came down the hill and we stalked for probably 45 minutes. I don't know how long it was, somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour and 15. And we went down to socks with, you know, you'll love this, the pants stuffed into the socks, because I know you're a fan.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were making noise too, like we were crawling on our knees. And from my perspective, is when they're making noise, you can make a little bit of noise.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me still how it goes from 0 miles an hour to you better pull back right now. And you got your distance right. Like, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. Like boom, 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 and you got to get a good shot off. But if one of those steps in that boom, 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 like, you're so screwed. Like, if you don't know how far away it is, especially with the sights we're shooting, the single pin, like, you need to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't shoot that anymore. Like,
Really?
I would never hunt with a single pin sight again. Like, I love single pin sights for everything, for 3D, for like, even like in the backyard when I like to constantly shoot different distances at different targets, but I would never hunt with a single pin sight again.
You going to save it for that 3D type stuff and then just you hunt with the 3-pin, or are you going to switch out altogether?
Well, this dude that I know, this friend's coming up with a new sight, and you can just switch them. And you have this thing, and I've seen it, so I know that.
It's out now. You can talk about it.
What do you mean it's out?
Like, you'll be able to buy it soon.
Okay, well, there's his new site. You can switch it.
Yeah.
So I would do that. I would totally get that, and I would never hunt with a single pin sight again.
I love the single pin sight because the optic is so clean. You know, you can see everything in there. But I have to agree. So the one I'm shooting is the Fast Eddie XL, I think. So it actually has 2 pins. So I'll at least have 2 different.
Yeah, and I had this real cool one, and I still have that. And when I bought this Axel sight, which I love, I took it off. I had one, I don't know what the company was, but it had 3 pins, and one of them would move up and down, and the others were fixed.
I think that's kind of like the one you have right now, Dad.
It's an IQ sight, yeah. That was really cool too, because you can set, like, you have your 20, your
And then you have
30,
the ability to slide.
and then one slide. So that was quite good. And I just think that just from the last couple of days, I'd prefer something where,
You have an easier transition.
yeah,
I think I've only hunted with that single pin, and I think, and I've only been hunting until August, but I think since then, I've only had the chance to dial it to a precise actual distance a few times, and the rest of it was holding a little bit high or a little bit low, because things go from nothing's happening to, oh my God, I need to do this right now. Or even out here, you draw back, you dial your distance in, and as I'm trying to relax and settle in, and the pig will move a little bit. So now my distance is a little bit off. Did it get closer? Did it get farther away? Like, let's party. What's about to go down here? I'm considering switching to I think it would be, yours will have what? 3 pins, and the third or the bottom will be movable? Or how's yours going to work? Because I know you have a
I don't-
slider for distance.
I'm not sure what I really wanted 4 or 5. I don't know if you could hear that. I really wanted 4 or 5. I used 4 just to cover me 20 through 50, because what I find is after 50, having a 50 to 60 pin, it starts to get, you really have to know your setup to know, where do I hold for 54? Where do I have to hold for 57? Like, am I going to hold my 60? Is it 3.5 inch drop, or, is it a 4-inch drop? Like, you really have to learn. So I just like, after 50, I like to be able to really fine tune the sight. And I feel like if I'm inside of 50 yards of an animal, especially like with, the majority of your guys' experiences, I would have literally had my hand on my rangefinder, my front hand would be on my bow. I would have got the range, literally lowered my release to my chest, hand straight forward to my release, and been back to where all my motions are in front of my body.
Yep.
Whereas when you're trying to like turn your bow to the side and now roll,
You got to make a step in between there, and then you look up from
And they've moved
and
again.
they've moved again. You're like, God, and then you got to go back to the rangefinder, and then you got to go back to the dial.
yeah. And I mean, having I guess some experience with your setup, if they've moved 1 or 2 yards, that's not really a big problem. It's not a problem when you're close. It's definitely a problem when you're further out. So I don't know what the everything comes down to skews with when companies make decisions. I'm happy that they pretty much implemented the majority of the things that we asked for, and the things I liked and didn't like about pretty much every product out there are all put into this. But when it comes to the small things like what type of mounting block it's going to have, or I'm thinking selfishly about my setup, and they're thinking, well, we need it to work on 7 different models of bows, and we need the number one sale on the shelf is a 3-pin sight, not a 4, or maybe they'll say it's a 5, or even there was a year where even the color of the fibers. I worked on one of the very first IQ sights, and then they moved it into a Sherlock sight model, and they were adamant about yellow pins, and I was just saying, I hate yellow. They
It's not
wash
easy to
out
see,
really
especially
yeah.
midday with good light.
Yeah, they wash out fast, and the owner just really thought yellow pins were cool, and he just said, yeah, this looks way cooler on the shelf, and that's what they went with. And then a few people took them outside and thought, I can't even see this thing, and then they hated it. And so there's a fine line there. I don't know if it'll be 3 or 5, but I asked for 4 just because I like to defy the man like Torsten.
In between the two. All I'll say with all that, you can have the best sight in the world and the best rangefinder. If you lose your shit when you pull back, none of it. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can have all of that stuff, and that's the one piece of advice I do give people when they reach out. I'm like, listen, just try to stress yourself out. Regardless of how you're training, get your heart rate up and try to get into that moment. Because I have messed up in that moment so many times in my life, even in my old career. Like, again, I was a sniper on a 1,000-meter flat range, and then it became a 2-way range, and my effective distance went way back down. And then only over years does that build back up.
Did the best guys really just have their kind of their one gun that they really knew well, and they were just much better with that than trying to constantly change equipment?
Not a lot of guys. I mean, your gun's kind of like your baby, right? It's just like your bow. So you get issued, and you could modify and put the sights on you wanted to, or the laser. You can figure it how you want to. So it's very individual. And then on the long gun side of the house, you get issued a suite of long guns. And when I was in, I think they probably switched to like some 338 Lapua stuff, but 300 Win Mag was like the standard.
Yeah.
And the 50 cal, which it weighs just under a ton, and then the bullets are like this big. It's this massive Yeti tumbler, and they weigh like 17 pounds per round. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So
I've
guys,
seen one.
oh, it's insane. Well, I mean, you have to manage your weight, and so guys are like, well, I'm going to bring 10 rounds. Can you carry 5 for me too? I'm like, well, not unless I get to shoot them. So get out of here. I don't carry bullets for other people. That's the deal. But if it goes boom and I'm carrying it, I get to make it go boom. But then in that suite of weapons, most people probably would favor or use one more than the other. And for me, like the 300 Win Mag, and you just get so comfortable. And anything like 0 to 500, that thing's a laser beam. And then you start learning the ballistics and the biggest stuff. So you're really good with the weapon, and then you got to learn the wind. That's the best performers, I would say, because calling wind is an art form. It's not a science.
Yep.
And spotting long range marksmanship is even more of an art form. Actually watching the trace of the bullet. They do an okay job in some movies, but it's pretty crazy to sit behind somebody and watch them take a shot and just see it travel through the atmosphere and drop and rise and go left and right, because you're looking at the mirage and you can just see this thing going. It's hard. And guys, the best long range shots that I know, I mean, guess what they're doing all the time?
Yeah.
They're behind the scope of a high-powered rifle, and they're all stress tests. We used to do that stuff all the time. Like, we would do all of these drills, and they'd be great. And they're like, okay, cool. Go throw your armor on. Now you're going to go do push-ups, sprint up to this, do something else. Oh, and now you're going to do the exact same drills again, and we want to see the same times. And you just train to that standard, and eventually you get to the point where, like, you're okay. It gets... That has helped me, I think, out in these environments, because I'm starting to be able to recognize, like, okay, we're about to get to that moment. And so I just, in my head, I start telling myself, I'm like, all right. Because my heart rate, just like, it's exciting, you know, and I recognize what that excitement does to me, because I've missed so many shots with a rifle because of feeling that way. So I'll start telling myself, like, all right, breathe. Like, I start focusing on my breathing, just and recognizing that it's trying to speed up. So I try to slow down and just chill the hell out in that moment, which is really, really hard to do if you've never been in that moment.
You're a little bit hard to read because you've dealt with those situations before. There's other people, like after Tyler shot, like I looked at him and I kind of just said, reload another arrow, because I didn't know if the hogs were going to totally scatter or whether or not he would still be able to pick up a straggler. And when I see him reloading his arrow, I was like, okay, he's like jacked. There is no way, if he had to play the game of operation right now, it'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
And I've seen Torsten like that, where, you know, I had to just like calm you down for long enough to bring you back. But I mean, I haven't really seen that in you. But are you still, what would you say your excitement or heart rate is? Like, say the first thing you ever shot with me was a bear that we shot off the ground. I mean, were you jacked?
I was more, honestly, just listening to what you were saying. We're sitting there and we're walking along, and it's like you hear this, and I mean, Dudley, being 8 feet tall, sees it before anybody else, and he just stops. And when he stops moving, I stop moving. There was these like bears having a playful wrestling match in the field, and they bolted off because they smelled us. And I took a shot at that one as it was running, because I guess why don't you take a shot at a running animal? Idiot. But 30 seconds later, I assumed in that moment, I was like, damn. But that was really cool, because that was the closest interaction I had. And Dudley just turns his head back and he goes, knock another arrow. And when he says that, it's like, oh yeah, roger that, knock an arrow. And then he's like, all right, get ready, pull back. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't see anything. In my head, I'm like, what am I doing? And then here comes the bear. Doom, da-doom, da-doom. So in that moment, I was more just like, oh wow. I was excited more afterwards. Mm-hmm. The recovery was very interesting.
Yeah.
That was pretty intense, but no, I mean, I was listening to what you said, and you're like, okay, hey, this is what we need to do. And I come from a lifetime of when people tell me what to do, I just try to do it. So in that moment, I wasn't that pumped up. It was probably I was more excited on the next day because we were watching them come. When it has that time to build, I think that anticipation is what gets you. Like, when we were stalking the pigs the other day, we were talking about it afterwards. It'd be so easy to waste all your effort because you get excited and you're like, oh, if I can just make it to that bush. Mm-hmm. And you do something stupid one time and you blow it. That Because in that moment, you're like, yes. And your heart's just, you're like, yeah, we're going to have bacon for dinner. So I start getting excited. But to go back to the old job, I recognize what that does in my own performance. So I try to
reel it back.
I try to reel it back as soon as possible. I never want it to get to the point, because believe me, my cup has spilled over many times in situations where it shouldn't have. And it's not awesome. And you look back, you're like, wow, that was not the person I wanted to be in that moment. So my thing is recognize way early and then just try to stay in control. And just, for me, breathing helps. But just as we're moving up there, and then by the time we get to the point where I pull back, I'm usually pretty calm by that point.
Having someone with you, it's just like anything. If someone with you is totally jacked up and they're nervous, it's
a rising tide.
Yeah, it's a rising tide. So for me, I get so into it. And I talked about this. My wife.
I don't think that actually covers it. I don't. No. I don't. If you say you're getting into it, I'm not sure that's enough. I don't know. I think you become it. Is more the thing. Like, I've never seen. I don't know anybody who changes.
Oh, you can
and
see
becomes,
the switch on in him.
Like,
for sure,
there's a switch that hits, and you see an animal, and you say go, and you're a different
that's where the
person.
switch is. Like, we'll be riding around.
Yeah.
When you see game,
that's it.
It's on.
Yes.
But your movement changes. It becomes. You make the jump, I would say, first to third in that transitional speed.
Yeah.
Not the speed that you're walking, which I will agree is very hard to keep up with a guy who's got long legs. But it's easier for me because I don't wear galoshes and onesies, but that's another story from a different day. That guy kept up, though. He was dying. He almost died, actually, but he kept up. But yeah, I can see it, too, like you're describing. It's instantaneous, and then it's game mode.
Yes. It's quite fascinating to see.
Well, I've had to learn to rope it back a little bit, because Sharon tells me sometimes I get so intense that it makes it not fun for someone that's just kind of wanting to be there. So Torsten came back and he had his version of our stock and how I was treating him, and then my version was, as I was going, Sharon was in my head saying, just make sure you make it fun for these guys. Don't get too serious or too intense. So I'm trying to do that. Meanwhile, when I look back and someone's not like on my hip, or if I'm literally stepping in cow pies because that actually squishes quieter than the dried grass next to it, and then I see Torsten just veering outside of the group like this stray piglet that's just like not following. I'm like, Torsten, cow shit now.
It's a unique experience.
I liked your description of it, though. You literally said, I was the only one
Yes.
that could tell. That was the best.
In the professional world, perhaps you wouldn't be getting direction.
My opinion is there's not a single person in the world that is allowed to talk to me like John Dudley when we're hunting, yes. I got to shoot.
I know you do. Before, though, like one more question. Now that you're on your second hunting trip, other than your sight, is there anything else you're going to change up about how you either train for archery or the gear that you brought?
Well, I think I brought too much gear. Mm-hmm. Although I do believe you can never bring too much gear, you just shouldn't carry it around. But you should have.
Speaking from experience, it's better to have too much than not
That's
enough.
what I'm saying. I think I changed my sight. I would train different just to get like heart rate down.
Yep.
And I used to do biathlon in the army, but that's 30 years ago. So
yeah. Same theory, though, right?
Same theory. Yes, we were like running and shooting,
And
so
then
you
you
had to
gotta
calm
lower it
down.
down.
But I didn't think about like starting to run before I came here. And otherwise, no. I think if I would do it more often, with everything, if you do it more often, you become more experienced.
Yep. And you had fun, though, at least.
I loved it.
Yeah, and I wish I could tell more people about that, too. It doesn't have to be pictures of dead animals. If we hadn't shot a single animal out here, I still would come back every single year, and just for the
My
experience
wife
of it all.
is probably happier that I missed.
It's because she hasn't tasted the
Yeah, she didn't like the thought of dead animal.
pulled pork. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I'll let you catch your flight, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in again. Thank you for spreading the podcast world throughout the world and internet. greatly appreciated. All the feedback and listener support, buying the t-shirts and hats and sweatshirt. It's amazing. And again, my goal with that, if I end up making some money off of that stuff, is to put it right back into the podcast and keep doing what I do. Keep linking up with people that I think are interesting and hopefully talking more about them than myself and learning for myself along the way. So thank you again for the reviews on iTunes. Thank you for listening. And that's just about it. Very grateful for everybody out there who's taken the time to tune in. So we will see you Monday, because I already have episode 31 recorded. I'm so just prepared and professional this week, even though, like I said, I'm a week and a half behind. But it's going to be good. So until Monday, see you.